Peter Pan by Lisa McClatchy. On a quiet street in London lived a family named the Darlings. Mr. and Mrs. Darling had 3 children, Wendy, John, and Michael. All 3 played and slept in the nursery. Wendy was the oldest. Each night before bed, she told her brothers all about the adventures of a hero named Peter Pan. John and Michael loved those stories. They romped through the house, pretending to have sword fights with pirates and look for treasure, just like Peter Pan. One night, Mr. Darling was getting ready to go out with his wife. He was quite frantic because his gold cufflinks were missing, and Michael had drawn a treasure map on his last clean shirt. Mr. Darling blamed Wendy for filling the boys' heads with stories of Peter Pan. He decided that night would be Wendy's last in the nursery. He thought she was ready to have a room of her own. Wendy was shocked. The boys were too. Sooner or later, people have to grow up, Mr. Darling said. Mrs. Darling tucked the children in, and before long, they were fast asleep. Later that night, Peter Pan and a fairy named Tinker Bell flew into the nursery. Peter often listened outside the window while Wendy told stories about him. The last time he was there, he'd lost his shadow and he needed it back. Soon, he found the shadow, but it tried to escape. Luckily, Wendy woke up and insisted upon sewing it back on. She told Peter that it was her last night in the nursery, for tomorrow she would have to grow up. "No, I won't have it," cried Peter. "Come on." "But where are we going?" asked Wendy. "Neverland," he replied. "You'll never grow up there." With all the commotion, John and Michael woke up. Peter Pan agreed that they could come along too. After a sprinkling of pixie dust, the Darling children rose into the air and followed Peter and Tinker Bell out the window. "We can fly," they shouted as they flew over the city. Meanwhile, back in Neverland, a pirate named Captain Hook was busy scheming with his first mate, Mr. Smee. Hook wanted revenge against Peter Pan. Long ago, Peter had chopped off Hook's hand in a sword fight and thrown it to a crocodile to eat. The crocodile thought it was delicious, and now he followed the pirate everywhere, hoping for another bite. Hook was constantly on the lookout for the hungry animal. Hook didn't know where to find Peter, so he decided to kidnap Tiger Lily, the Indian chief's daughter. She was a good friend of Peter Pan's, and Hook was sure they could get her to reveal the location of his hideout. As Peter, Tinker Bell, and the children approached Neverland, Peter shouted, "There it is, Wendy," and pointed to the wondrous land below. "Oh, Peter, it's just as I've always dreamed it would be," Wendy replied excitedly. But Captain Hook had spotted Peter Pan flying in the clouds. He shot a cannonball toward them. Peter and the children jumped behind the cloud. Luckily, it zoomed by and they didn't get hurt. "Quick, Tink! Take Wendy and the boys to the island," yelled Peter as he raced down toward Hook's ship. While Peter distracted Hook, Tinker Bell hurried toward the island. She flew so fast that Wendy, John, and Michael fell far behind. The fairy thought Peter Pan was spending too much time with Wendy. She was jealous, so she went to see the lost boys, who lived with Peter in Hangman's Tree. Peter was their leader. They'd do anything he said. So Tink told them that he wanted them to shoot the Wendy bird out of the sky. The lost boys grabbed their slingshots and aimed at Wendy. Fortunately, Peter arrived in time to save her as she fell toward the ground. He was very angry with Tinker Bell, though. "Tinker Bell, I hereby banish you forever," he shouted. "Please, not forever," Wendy pleaded. She and her brothers were fine, after all. "Well, for a week then," Peter agreed. But Tink didn't hear him. She had already flown away. Next, Peter took Wendy on a tour of Neverland. While visiting the mermaids, Peter spotted Hook interrogating Tiger Lily, who was tied to a rock in the water. The pirate was still convinced she knew the location of Peter's hiding place, but Tiger Lily wouldn't give him any information. Peter revealed himself and challenged Hook. They fought one another, and as they did, the rising tide got closer and closer to Tiger Lily's head. Peter Pan finally won, sending Hook into the water, where the crocodile was waiting. The pirate swam away quickly, and Smee rowed out to save him. Peter swooped down and rescued Tiger Lily just as the water was about to cover her. He brought her safely back to her village. Her father, the chief, named Peter Eagle Feathers, and there was a great celebration. The only one who didn't celebrate was Tinker Bell. She still thought Peter had banished her forever and was very upset. Captain Hook had heard what had happened, and he sent Smee to fetch her immediately. Hook persuaded Tink to tell him that Hangman's Tree was the entrance to Peter's hiding place. But before she did, she made him promise not to harm Peter Pan. Later, while Peter was out, Hook's pirates went to his hideout and kidnapped Wendy, John, Michael, and the Lost Boys. Hook left a bomb disguised as a present for Peter. Then he took the children back to his ship and tied them up. They didn't know how they would ever escape. Tinker Bell was shocked when she discovered Hook's plans to blow up Peter. With only minutes to spare, she flew as fast as she could to warn him. Peter was about to unwrap the present, but Tink grabbed it right before it exploded. Kaboom! Peter didn't think Tinker Bell had survived the blast. He was upset, but he didn't want anyone else to get hurt. So he raced back to Hook's ship to save the children. When he got there, Wendy was walking the plank. Peter caught her right before she fell in the water. Then he jumped on the ship's deck and challenged Hook. "This time you've gone too far," he yelled. Just then, Tinker Bell flew by. She had survived. "You wouldn't dare fight old Hook man to man," the pirate sneered. "I'll fight you man to man with one hand behind my back," countered Peter. They began to duel. Meanwhile, John, Michael, and the Lost Boys climbed to the crow's nest and battled the other pirates. The Lost Boys threw rocks and fired slingshots just as the pirates got close to them. John even hit them on the head with his umbrella. One by one, the pirates were defeated, all except Hook, who was still fighting Peter. Peter and Hook battled it out on the ship's yardarm, which had swung over the water. Peter grabbed Hook's sword, but then decided to let him go. But the pirate had been humiliated. He took a swipe at Peter, lost his balance, and plunged into the water, right into the jaws of the crocodile. "Smee!" Hook cried as a ferocious crocodile chased him far out to sea. "Cap! Wait for us!" His first mate yelled as he and the pirates rowed after Hook in a small lifeboat. Peter took control of Hook's ship, and Wendy and the rest of the children cheered. Hooray for Captain Pan. "Could you tell me, sir, where we're sailing?" asked Wendy with a smile. "To London, madam," replied Peter. Michael, John, we are going home, cried Wendy joyfully. The children were all very happy, for they had gotten homesick. Tinker Bell sprinkled the ship with pixie dust, and soon it was flying out of the water, through the air, and back to London. Below them, Neverland grew smaller and smaller until it finally disappeared. Wendy and her brothers said goodbye to Peter. They knew they would always remember their marvelous adventure. At home, Wendy told her parents she was ready to grow up. Then they gazed out the window together, just in time to see the ship pass across the moon. You know, Mr. Darling said, his arm around his daughter, I have the strangest feeling that I've seen that ship before, a long time ago. The end.